What's up, everybody? I'm Kyle Winjack, and with it being January, I thought it'd be a really good time to talk about goal setting as a musician. So, this is something that I find very useful in that it helps me to stay on track and feel like I keep progressing. So, if you feel like you're practicing a lot, putting in a lot of effort, and not getting the results that you would expect or want, then this could be for you. Now, the reason I think this works so well is because it's really important to be focused while you're practicing. But then there's the question of what do you focus on? And that's where goal setting comes in. So you could do this using pen and paper or Microsoft Word, or if you want to use the fancy template that I'm using in this video, you can download it for free in the description. So I think it's really important going into every practice session that you have a clear goal or outcome in mind. But before you can set that, you need to know what you're striving for and why. So I think it's a good idea to set a long-term goal first, and then you can make sure that your shorter-term goals are in alignment with the long-term goal. And it's entirely possible that these long-term goals will change over time, and that's completely okay. But I think picking something will help you maintain a sense of forward momentum, and I think that's really important as a musician or just in life in general. So I think a good place to start is to set one big 5-year goal for yourself. And this could be to have a multi-platinum selling album or just to be able to play all your favorite folk songs around the campfire. It's entirely up to you what you want to do with music, but this process is one way that you can help get closer to whatever your goals happen to be. So I'm going to guide you through this hypothetical scenario, and these goals may or may not align with what you want to do, but that's okay. I think the point that I want to get across is how I would approach setting goals. So let's say, for the sake of this video, that you're kind of just starting out, you've been playing for a few months, and you've fallen in love with music, and you want to become a well-rounded professional musician. So that might seem like a pretty daunting goal, and yeah, it's going to take a lot of work, but you'd be surprised what you can accomplish in 5 years, or even just in one. The trick is to break it down into smaller, more manageable tasks. And you could have more than one goal too, but I would say keep it to 3 tops, just so that you're staying clear on what's important to you. So if your goal was to be a full-time professional musician in 5 years, it's going to take some time to get there, and you're going to need experience performing before that. So I would say a good goal would be to start performing within a year. So for this hypothetical person, it might be a good idea to book a show for a year from now. It might be kind of tricky to do that if you don't have a proper EPK or anything to show to promoters, but it could still be possible, especially if you're willing to organize and put on the show yourself. Regardless, if you were going to pull this off, you would need to have solid fundamentals, including theory and ear training. You're going to have to learn repertoire, and you're going to have to find some people to play with. Now, you could argue that you could do this as a solo musician, and sure, I suppose you could, but I think one of the best ways to learn is to play with other musicians. So while technically it may be possible to go it alone and have a successful career, I think you could make a strong case for finding some people to jam with, even if you're not going to perform with those people. I think this is especially true if the people that you're playing with are better than you. One way you could do that, if you can find the budget for it, is to find a really good teacher. And I would highly recommend that everybody does that at some point in their career. Actually, as a side note, I've heard that the great saxophonist Michael Brecker, one of the reasons he started playing guitar was because he loved taking lessons from people, and he would always ask people for saxophone lessons, but they're like, no, you're Michael Brecker, I can't teach you anything. So since he couldn't get saxophone lessons, he started playing guitar, or at least that's what I heard. So now you've got a 5-year goal, you've got a 1-year goal. I would set a 6-month goal as well. And I think the trick here is to try to make these goals big enough that they're inspiring, but also within reach and consistent with the amount of effort and time that you're willing to put into it. So if your goal is to become a world-class virtuoso and you're practicing 15 minutes a day, well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say one of those things is going to have to budge. And actually, if you're extremely focused, you can accomplish a lot in 15 minutes a day, but almost definitely not enough to get to the highest level on your instrument within 5 years. On the other hand, if it's just a hobby and you're trying to have fun with it, that's totally fine. And in that case, the input and the output line up, and that's what you want. So in this example, let's take a look at the repertoire. It might be a good goal for 6 months to really thoroughly learn 24 tunes. So that works out to 1 tune a week. Now, like I said, you can and probably should have at least a few goals in each of these categories, but just to keep this video short and concise, we're just going to roll with this one. I'm really just trying to shed some light on the process, or at least how I think of it. So the reason I think this is a good goal is because even though the number is somewhat arbitrary, it's a good amount of tunes. You probably could learn more if you're skating over them, but it's an amount that you could really, really learn thoroughly in that amount of time. And once you get really good at learning tunes, you could even potentially learn a song really well every day. But remember, this hypothetical person is a beginner, maybe early intermediate. So learning tunes is a skill, and that will develop over time. I think it's also good to have goals that are qualitative, meaning something that's easily measurable so that you know if you're on track or not. So in this case, the benchmark is a tune a week. Okay, so you can set monthly goals too. Obviously, for this one, it's 4 tunes a month, and your weekly goal is to learn 1 tune really well. Simple stuff. So now we know what we want to do, and it's time to think about how we're actually going to accomplish that, right? So, in terms of learning tunes, so let's say this hypothetical person has an hour and a half a day to put into this specific aspect of their musical development, and then maybe another hour and a half session on other things like technique, theory, etc. So I would probably start each day with 20 minutes of really focused listening. And I would find as many versions of the song that I was trying to learn as I could, and just put some headphones or some speakers on, get rid of any distractions, and really listen to the song. And then I would put in the rest of that day's time into learning the melody, just the melody. You don't have to worry about the chord changes or any of that stuff yet. And if it's a particularly difficult melody, maybe you would even break this into smaller sections and tackle it over a few days. But I would make sure that I'm able to sing it, at least slowly, and of course play it on your instrument as well. And I would do that in 12 keys if possible, even if it takes you a few days to get through that. And if our hypothetical person, Sharon, I decided her name's Sharon, by the way. So let's say Sharon can't hack it. She can't get through all 12 keys on that melody. Maybe pick an easier one. And then if she starts with something simpler, maybe later on she gets better at this process and she's able to do that more complicated melody. And before you know it, Sharon's blazing through Got a Match by Chick Corea in 12 keys. Good job, Sharon. I'm proud of you. So the next thing you'll want to do is learn the chord changes. But maybe you start with just the roots and you learn how to sing those and play them in 12 keys. And even if you just got through that much, that's better than most people learn tunes. But Sharon's a real badass, and she's going to go the extra mile, right? So she learned the melody in all 12 keys. She can sing the bass line, or at least the roots. Now she's going to learn how to comp through the chords on piano, just keeping it really simple, using basic chord voicings and not worrying about the rhythm, just hammering them all out on beat 1 or beat 3 or wherever the chord change actually happens. So Timmy also has the same goal, and he can't do this because he plays trumpet and he can only play one note at a time, so he's going to arpeggiate them instead. But back to Sharon, who I've now decided plays piano. The next thing she'll want to do is learn how to play the chords in the left hand and the melody in the right hand, maybe some sort of solo piano type arrangement. And then the day after that, she starts to practice improvising on the chord changes. So maybe at first she starts with just her right hand and she leaves out the chords in the left hand. And then once she gets a hang of that, she'll add the chords back in. The point here is that we're breaking down these tasks into really small, manageable chunks and then trying to really thoroughly master them. And that's the trick. So let's say it's day 6 and the next step is that Sharon wants to come up with a unique arrangement and maybe do some reharm, and now it's time to just explore and get free with the melody. And then day 7, she can rest. Good job, Sharon. And you did good too, Timmy. Go play some long tones. So I hope by watching this, you can kind of see the benefits of setting goals and taking something that seems daunting and maybe even unattainable and breaking it up into smaller little pieces that can help you build up to that goal gradually. So the key takeaways here are to set long-term goals and then shorter goals as well that align with those long-term goals. Then you really want to focus and just pretend that that's the only thing that matters, is getting that one little piece as well as you possibly can in that time. And you may have to adjust things along the way, but I find that when I set goals, even if I don't achieve them in the time that I've allotted, I'll usually progress a lot more than if I'm just practicing aimlessly. So like, comment, subscribe if you found this helpful, It helps with the algorithm. It'll help more people get access to this information. And go ahead and download that handy little PDF workbook in the description. And I'll see you next time.